It's time to get in the game.
Get in the game.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Get in the Game podcast, the podcast where we explore ways to get off the sidelines, stop making excuses, and get in the game. I'm your coach, Trevor Dean. That's right, I said coach, and I am here to help encourage you, train you, mentor you, and yet coach you up in ways that we can stop spectating and get involved. I have a love and passion for coaching and helping people, and it's my goal to glorify God in doing so. Speaking of glory to God, I mentioned last episode that we will be having an anchor verse for the Get in the Game podcast, and that is Colossians 3:23. So I'm going to read it now. It's whatever you do, do your work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men. And so that's our whole goal with this endeavor of a podcast, is to bring glory to God. Everything we do has a purpose. The purpose that I have in my life is to worship Him through the skills and through the fun, through the work that I do. It's all for Him and not for anyone else. Not for myself, not for an employer, not for my spouse. It's for God. God gets the glory, and then God blesses us afterwards. That's the way I believe, and that's the way I'm going to approach this podcast. So getting into it today, we're going to be talking about integrity. Integrity is one of a few different core values I believe that need to be in place before we can actually get into the game. A definition of integrity, I feel like the world kind of has this general definition of. It's being the same in private as you are in public. It kind of brings a consistency about it. You don't have to hide anything. You're never different. It's kind of that what you see is what you get type of mentality and lifestyle. And so consistency is a big part of integrity. Doing what's right, even if no one is watching. That's another one that it kind of is out there, and it's has virtue in it. It's about being good, doing the right thing. It's a notion of right and wrong behavior. And that's also very important in the general definition of integrity. Merriam-Webster has a few different definitions for it. There's three of them. It's a firm adherence to a code of especially moral or artistic values, or an incorruptibility. So basically on that one, it's kind of, if you stick to it, you're unable to be corrupted by it. You are so stuck and devoted to these moral and artistic values, and you can't be corrupted by that. Nothing else can get in there. The second definition it has, it's an unimpaired condition or a soundness. And so what I kind of think about this is like a home, like a structural integrity, a home, a roof, a building, a bridge that you might walk over or drive over. You just know that it is structurally sound. It's unimpaired. You know that when you drive over it, it's going to hold you. It's going to do what it's supposed to do. It's a sound built structure. That's what I feel on that, the unimpaired condition. And then the third definition they have is the quality of being complete or undivided completeness. And when I think about that, I think about a team or a family. You have the same kind of mindset, you have the same goal, and you work together in a group, and it's complete. There's no missing pieces, and you're all moving forward together. That's kind of how I feel that definition in how it resonates in my mind. Biblically, there's a lot of words to this one. So biblically, integrity is the condition of being without blemish, complete, perfection, sincere, sound, upright, and whole. So you kind of hear a lot of those things in those previous, the general one in the Merriam-Webster dictionary definitions. It's kind of, all those words are in there somewhere. And then it also means it's an honesty and adherence to a pattern of good works. So that kind of almost mirrors the moral and artistic values from the Merriam-Webster definition. As a Christian, though, I might even take it a step further and say that those good works need to be based off a certain set of standards. As a Christian, my standard is Jesus. He is perfect. He came, he lived a perfect life. That's what my goal is to live as close as I can to Christ as possible. So we know that because he was perfect, we know that we are not. It's very evident through the scriptures that we are not a perfect people. And we actually all sin and we all fall short of what that example is. In fact, in Romans 3:23, I like the New Living Translation version of that because it actually uses the word standard. It says, "For everyone has sinned, we all fall short of God's glorious standard." And the reason I like it because it says standard is in my athletic mind and my coaching mind, I think of it as the standards we have in sport. And as a volleyball coach, that's what I coached. A men's net is actually about 8 feet tall. It's actually in metric measurements, so it's not quite 8 feet. And a women's net is just about 7 feet 4 inches. So there's about an 8-inch difference between the two. So when I would coach boys volleyball and we'd be playing on an 8-foot net, if we actually lowered the net, we are literally lowering the standards because the poles in volleyball that hold the net are called standards. So if we lower the standards of the game for the boys team, what does that really do for them? If we practice that way and do all the stuff and then we have to play in a game at the normal height, what does playing at lower standards actually do for them? Well, in my mind, it doesn't do anything for them other than just being a little more fun because the difference in ability is amplified because of the shorter net. But it actually gives them a false sense of accomplishment and it gives them a false sense of security in their abilities. They're not as good as they should be on an 8-foot net. And you end up being a little bit more cocky in your abilities. I've seen it happen so many times. You know, they always wanted to lower the net at the end of practice to see what they could do, and it gives them this false sense of security. They start talking about themselves a little more cocky. They start believing that they're better than they are. They embellish the truth, not only to others, but to themselves as well. And it's not good because what happens is when you go to the game and you have to play at a higher level at the actual standard, it messes your game up. So in order to eventually reach the level that we desire to be at in our respective game, we have to be true to the standards that have been set. And that's true in your Christian walk. It's also true in whatever your endeavor is. If there's standards that have been set, you have to follow them. And those could be different for everyone. If I wanted to learn a new language, for me, it might be 30 minutes a day, every single day. For someone else, it might be 15 minutes a day, or it could be 30 minutes every other day. But once you set the standards for yourself, you have to live up to those. There's no lowering those in order to get where you want to be. In order to follow this, there's 4 components of integrity that in life, I feel all have to fall together. Your thoughts, your decisions, your speech, and your actions, they all have to fall together in order to be a person of integrity in whatever you do. They all build on one another. Your thoughts decide your decisions impact your speech, and your speech, if it doesn't line up with your actions, then you don't have integrity. That leads, when you don't have that, it kind of leads to that do as I say, not as I do attitude. We probably all heard that either from a teacher or a coach or maybe even a parent before. And when this becomes common practice, you hurt the trust that others have in you. It becomes confusing and they don't know which way that you are really coming at them. I know as a coach, as a person of authority at times, when you don't do that, you lose that trust. They don't know whether to trust your actions or trust your speech because they don't line up. The old English philosopher Francis Bacon said, it's not what we profess, but what we practice that gives us integrity. So it's what people see from us that gives that integrity. If that lines up with what we profess, then you're on the right track to it. As a coach, I mentioned before, stuff wouldn't always line up. When I first started being a coach, I was still in pretty good shape. I could still play the game pretty well. But there were times where we were in game situation practice. We really believed that we would practice more in game situations than maybe like drills and little skill building. And so when we had that game time practice, every once in a while they needed another body, so I'd jump in and play. And the way I played against my players wasn't always the way that I wanted them to play against their opponents. And so, a little background, I'm super competitive, and even now in board games or anything else that might be a little competitive, I sometimes have that win at all costs mentality, except I won't go to the point of cheating. As long as it wasn't cheating, it was fair game. And sometimes still now in a board game with family and everything, I like to jaw a little bit. I like to kind of get in their heads, but it doesn't mean I don't go too far sometimes and push the limit a little bit and start being a jerk. And that happened a lot when I was a young coach. I would get on the court and I would do things to kind of get in their head. I'd push the limits of what's accepted in terms of game etiquette and everything. But when it came for game time, it made me mad when the players would treat their opponents with the same disrespect that I give them. So I was being a hypocrite. I was telling them that I wanted them to be respectful and show the game some respect, show your opponents respect. And I did the opposite in practice. And there are players I know that I've had that I never reached the way that I could have because I didn't go at the coaching aspect or the playing aspect with integrity. I did not play the way I wanted them to play. It did not line up with my words. And so I was professing the way and respect that they should be showing to the game and to players and to referees and other coaches. But then when it came time for me to show how I would do it in practice, I wouldn't. And I know that hurt my ability to get the most out of them. I became really cocky, and even though I was confident, I let that cockiness play out over it. And there's a huge difference between cocky and confident. When you're confident and you back up what you say, it almost amplifies the integrity that you have. It amplifies what you're saying so much. And you become that coach or that player or anyone that people want to be coached by, or that player that they want to play with, or you become that player that you want to coach because you just know that this is a person of integrity and you want to be around them as much as possible. The two main keys to integrity is honesty and truth. Without honesty and truth, hypocrisy takes hold, and you can't have integrity without them. And, integrity is important when talking about getting in the game, because when you try to live a life of integrity, you make everything you commit to a priority. It might not be your number one priority. It might not be your second or third priority, but you're making it important to you. You start to make a schedule, and in making it a priority, you'll set what designated time you need, and you'll stick to it. Because if you don't stick to it, then it leads to making excuses for yourself, justifying why it didn't happen. You start to lie for yourself, or lie to yourself rather, that, I had a really hard day. It was really stressful. Like, I don't have the 30 minutes to go to the gym and jump on the treadmill like I wanted to today. When you committed to doing that early on, you saying, I'm going to commit to getting in shape, and I'm going to skip today because it was tough. Now, that doesn't mean that things don't happen and there's legitimate reasons why you can't do things, but you have that commitment to it that you're going to make it up. But just kind of like being lazy about it and getting into the point where like, oh, like, you know what, it's okay. You know, my wife wants to go to dinner tonight, so I can skip it. Or just any other reason why you won't do it. Any other reason why you can put it off. That's what'll happen when you don't commit to it all the way. That practice that you put in builds trust, and it's not only trust in yourself, but it's trust with others. For yourself, you start to think, you know, I can add more to the mix. Whether it's, I could put more time into it, I could put more effort. So kind of think like in terms of effort, like at the gym, you might be running at a certain pace for a certain amount of time. And you do that for a couple months and you realize, you know what, I can go a little harder. So you can put more effort into it. Or you can increase the frequency, how many times a week you start going to the gym. Maybe you start off with 3, but then you say, you know what, I can do this and I can go to 5. So it's still time, but it's a different frequency of it. And then that trust with others, they can count on you to do what you commit to do. They see that you've made something important in your life and you're going to follow it. And so they see you as being a person of your word. If you say you're going to do something, you're going to live a certain way, then you do it. You do it always, you do it in everything, and you do it with everyone. There's no excuses for that. If you're going to commit to it, then you stick with it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You follow up. It's another way that integrity is important. It's a follow-up. It's a gauge to see, what you were able to do. You can look back and you say, you know what, I did everything I said I was going to do. I did everything I needed to do. And this is the progress I've got from it. And then you can say, okay, now I can amp it up. I can do more stuff. And that kind of plays to that self-trust. I've done everything I've said I'm going to do. I've built that foundation, and now I can amp it up and get even better with it. It's super important to be people of integrity because it takes a long, long time to build it up, but it can take a moment to destroy your integrity. We've seen it all the time with, whether it be celebrities or whether it be people in the church who are kind of like almost church celebrities. We see things all the time where we think that they're people of integrity, and then all of a sudden they have this kind of fall. And it's important that we strive and we put the work in and day out, and remember that we have to keep this going, because it literally, everything can fall apart around it if we don't live with integrity, live with the intentionality of doing things the right way. So whatever it is that you want to get into or want to start or restart, I challenge you to do it with integrity. Make a plan, set a schedule, set your standards, live up to those standards, and just get into it. I said it before, and I'll say it again at the end of every podcast. It is time to get off the sidelines, stop making excuses for yourself, and just get in the game. Let's be people of integrity. We'll see you next week.
Get in the game.
Thank you for listening to the Get in the Game podcast. Please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. That's the best way to support us. Find us on YouTube and subscribe for more content. If you would like for us to pray for you, or if you have topics that you would like us to tackle in upcoming episodes, email us at getinthegamepodcast@gmail.com. That's getinthegamepodcast@gmail.com. Or hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at getinthegamepc. If you've experienced getting off the sidelines and getting into the game yourself, please let us know. And remember, it's time to get in the game.